first time. We've just started this series called Citizen Voices. You're our first guest. You're breaking it in for us. Yay.
Thank you. What an honor.
And the idea is, as you could see, we have a lot of engineers working on great products to help patients and advocacy groups, but they oftentimes don't get to talk to patients and advocacy leaders in person. So want you to come in, share your experiences, and also for you to get an insight into what we're building, which we'll share with you. Why don't you just introduce yourself and give us a little background of your life before rare disease, what you were doing, and then we'll get into what happened.
Okay, so I am not as smart as all of you. I'll just start with that. I don't do science or engineering or any of that. So my name is Sumaira. I am a patient living with a rare disease. We'll get to that momentarily. But I'm a child of immigrants. My parents immigrated to the US from a very small country called Bangladesh 40 years ago. I'm the youngest of 3 girls. And from the age of like 3, I had decided that I wanted to be a superstar. I was like, I want to dance, I want to sing. I saw my first Bollywood movie when I was 3, and it became a part of our family kind of just bonding. We always watched Hindi movies on our sectional and all the things. So yeah, very early on, I would watch these films and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to entertain, I want to emote, I want to dance, I want to do all the things. And you know, I think normal parents would be like, okay, she'll grow out of it, whatever. My parents, no, they were like, she's a star. So they really invested in me at a very young age. I started doing Kathak, which is classical Indian dance, when I was 4 years old. And then I started singing and playing the harmonium. And I started doing Bengali theater. And then I started traveling for dance because I really took it seriously as a kid. I performed at Madison Square Garden for the first time when I was 8 years old. And just really just started doing more and more and more. And my parents were like, okay, she's serious. And when I was in high school, I had the opportunity to move to Mumbai in India to go to acting school. And so I moved to Bombay when I was 15, and I went to a very famous acting school alongside some people who are really famous now. This was 20 years ago. And I was the youngest person in my class. I was the only American, and it was truly the best time of my life. I went there alone. I had no family there. My dad kind of just dropped me off, found this very old couple, and they're like, can she rent a room here? And like, you guys just kind of keep an eye on her. So that's what happened. And I lived there for about 9 months. Once I finished my acting school, I came back to America, and I had to go to junior year and do my SATs and all of that. And then the question came about, well, what's going to happen for college? And I have to say, I'm very proud of my young self, because I was very forward thinking then. I was like, okay, if I'm going to be an actress, and presumably a famous actress, especially with young brown girls looking up to me all over the world, I need to set a good example and go to college. I wanted to get an education and, you know, just kind of be rooted in that. And so I finished high school, and I took a break from acting, and I went to Boston. That's what brought me there. And I went to Boston University. I studied public relations, which I thought would be helpful to me no matter what I did in my life, but especially as an entertainer. You know, it's good to kind of manage your own reputation and all of the things. And so when I graduated from college, the plan was that I was just kind of move back to India and pick up where I left off, and I don't know, like be the next Angelina Jolie of India or something like that. But of course, life doesn't always work out the way you want it to. Without going into too much detail, we had a family tragedy shortly after my graduation. So that prevented me from going back to India and pursuing my dreams. And it put me in this position where I was like, I think I need to find a job, like a normal job in an office, like work 9 to 5 until I can go back. So I started working in healthcare in Boston until the time was right for me to go back. I started working in ophthalmology, which will play a role in my life later. So I started in the call center, very quickly worked my way up to the aesthetics department, then the corneal and refractive surgery. Long story short, I grew very quickly in the organization. And it turns out I was good at a normal job. I had never done a normal job in my life, but I liked it. I was good at it, but still my heart was in the performing arts world. So finally, 2014 rolls around. It's been 3 years since I graduated from college. I'm like, God damn it, I'm getting old. I need to do something if I want to be an actress. And so I was like, I don't think going to India is going to work right now. Why don't I move to LA? Priyanka Chopra had not really made her mark yet in LA. Diversity was just becoming a thing. And I was like, I'm going to move to LA and do my thing. So my plan was September 2014 that I was going to move to LA to become an actress. And that's when.
That's when. So yeah, let us paint the whole picture. You know, you've told me about it, and you know, I'm a caregiver. I'm not a patient myself, and so hearing from you actually what you went through is pretty astounding, and especially as an adult. It's not a condition that you had from childhood, that you were used to, that your parents helped you with. So yeah, just walk us through what happened.
Yeah, so May 2014, I was 24, and I was getting oral surgery. I had like all 4 of my wisdom teeth were impacted, very routine procedure. I needed to get them removed. So I got them removed, and then I had an infection, which is also kind of common after wisdom teeth surgery. And 2 weeks later, I lost vision in my right eye completely, like blackout. And thankfully I was working in ophthalmology. So I went to the doctors and I was like, guys, I cannot see out of my right eye. And they're like, oh, Sumaira, she's just being a drama queen. I was like, no, I can't see. So they did all these eye exams and they saw that, okay, actually she has like almost a full visual field deficit in my right eye. And so they're like, okay, you need to get an MRI because structurally we can't really find anything wrong with your eye. It was 4th of July weekend, and if for those of you guys all work in medicine, that's when all the fellows and the residents, they rotate. So everybody's brand new. And so I was so naive. I like brought my weekend bag to this outpatient MRI, and I was like, I'm gonna get an MRI, and then I'm gonna go to my weekend, like 4th of July, party like a rock star, no problem. I wasn't scared at all. And so I go to Mass Eye and Ear, which is a part of Mass General in Boston, part of the Harvard Medical School system. And what was supposed to be a 2-hour appointment ended up being a 14-hour day in the emergency room, having seen almost every specialist. And everyone was just sort of scratching their head, like, why is this otherwise healthy young woman rapidly losing vision? So then they order the MRI. And of course, I come out of the MRI, and that's when we learned that I had inflammation in the optic nerves and the chiasm, and that's what was causing the vision loss. So I get admitted into adult neurology, very, very snazzy hospital. I have to say, it was like a hotel. And I was 24, so I'm like, this is kind of nice. Like, I'll take it. And I didn't tell anyone in my family. I didn't want to startle anyone. No one really seemed too nervous or like worried, so I wasn't either. And I got 3 days of IV steroids. When I was released, they said, okay, you had an idiopathic case of optic neuritis, which is inflammation in the optic nerves. You have a 16% chance of developing MS at some point in your life. You're severely vitamin D deficient, but take some vitamin D and move on. You'll be okay. Your vision will come back within 3 months to a year. So, okay. If they're not worried, I'm not worried. Okay. So it's July 2014. My birthday's in July. Best month ever to have a birthday.
Agree.
And so I was like, I'm just gonna move on with my life, vision or no vision. I'm gonna party. I loved clubs and all the things. So that's exactly what I did. And 1 week after my 25th birthday, the situation was very different. I was in my office, at the ophthalmology office. And long story long, I can't keep a story short, sorry. But Monday, I went from being 20/60 in my right eye and 20/20 in my left eye. So I had already experienced a regression. I was 20/20 up until then. Tuesday, I was 2200, which is legally blind, in 20/20, plus the blackout. So whatever I could see out of the field of vision was starting to regress. Wednesday, I was 2,600 and 2120. And if you had cut my body in half, the entire left side was like burning and on fire. And I couldn't even identify the E on like the Snellen chart, the eye chart that's, in the ophthalmology offices. So I collapsed in my office. And I always want to say, I was so scared to be home alone during that time. And I was like, I'm safer at work where I'm surrounded by all these doctors. God forbid if anything happens to me, I'm in the right place. I collapsed at work. They called an ambulance. I get rushed to the hospital. This time I called my family. I was like, I think you guys need to come to Boston. Something's not right. The hospital also treated me very differently this time around. Like there was no funny business. I wasn't, joking with them and all the things. I got 4 hours of imaging, 20 vials of blood drawn, my first lumbar puncture, all kinds of tests and whatnot, admitted right away, put on IV steroids right away, put on morphine because I couldn't walk. I was losing my ability to walk. And so my family shows up. I'm getting all this treatment. And I remember day 3 when I kind of gained consciousness, an entourage of doctors walks in to my very crowded hospital room. I have to say I was very popular. I had 25 people in the room. The doctors come in and they're like, we need to speak to you privately about what's going on. And I remember I was just like, unless I have an STD, you can tell me what's going on around all of these people. And I knew I didn't. It was an eye issue. That was the first time I ever heard the name of my diagnosis. They said, we suspect that you have something called neuromyelitis optica. And so that's what they said. And I was like, what the what? And they said, we're not so sure because you don't test positive for the antibody, but all of your symptoms align with this diagnosis. And my first question was, am I going to die from this? And they couldn't really give me a straight answer, which of course startled my family. I was started on immunosuppressive therapy right away. What I learned very quickly was that the prognosis was not good. There were no available therapies, no approved therapies. Everything was off-label. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Not hereditary, nothing I did to myself. Because of course, you immediately start to blame yourself. You're like, what did I do? Was I partying too much? Did I drink too much? My mind was spiraling. And so, of course, my life changed overnight. I was like, okay, so Bollywood, bye. Hollywood, bye. I don't think that that's going to happen right now. I need to figure out how to see again and to walk again. So yeah, no approved therapies, no known cause, no cure, just kind of in no man's land. And so when I got discharged, I remember getting discharged with 3 things. The first was a list of all of my outpatient appointments. I mean, it was like a full-time job, all the different specialists that I had to see. The second was I was given a list of all the different oral medications and my infusion appointments that I, had to take and go to. And mind you, I was the kind of person, I didn't even take Tylenol. I was, it was just such a drastic change. And the third thing I'll never forget, it was like a comic of all the foods you should avoid if you don't want to gain weight while on steroids. Which, listen, as a 25-year-old woman who was in the acting industry and all that, I was like, that's going to be helpful. I'm going to put that on my refrigerator. But I was like, okay, but is there a support group? Is there a celebrity who has this? What do I do next? And MGH, one of the best hospitals in the world, they had nothing to say. They're like, oh, I don't know, Google it. So of course I go home and I Google it. And the first thing you read is that you have a max of 5 years to live.
I know when I told you that before.
No.
Prepared you.
No. I mean, when I asked them, am I going to die from this? They kind of gave me a wishy-washy answer, but no one said anything about 5 years. I was like, okay, that's a shock. So of course I'm processing all of this. I mean, it was just too much. I went from being this happy-go-lucky dancing little butterfly, celebrating my 25th birthday to now I'm blind, unable to walk. I have a rare disease that nobody in my life has ever heard of. There's no cure, there's no treatment. We're just going to try a bunch of things. I can't see. It's just mental.
That's an insane story.
Yeah.
And your symptoms on the spectrum, how severe, what you experience, is that the normal experience of most people that have the condition?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, I would say NMOSD patients don't experience mild symptoms when it comes to the onset. It's very violent. The way it came on for me, actually, I would say I had it a little bit milder than most patients, and I went through hell. So I can't even imagine what other patients go through. But like, I was diagnosed within 5 weeks. In rare disease, that doesn't happen.
Why do you think it was so quick for you versus others?
Being at the right place at the right time. I think being at Mass General was really helpful. I was also relentless. I mean, I think I didn't stop until I knew what was going on. In fact, because I was seronegative, we still had this question of, does she actually have this? So actually, for 9 months following that, we went on this crazy journey of testing me for everything under the sun, taking biopsies from here, more lumbar punctures, more this, more that, all while going through treatment and relapsing like every month. I was in the hospital all the time getting plasmapheresis, and it was just, the Sumaira you're seeing today was a very different Sumaira then. And then I remember it was like 9 months into all of this, when we were still on this odyssey of trying to find the diagnosis, one doctor was like, oh my God, you might have cancer. We didn't even think of that. And, at the time I was like, actually, I'd rather have cancer because we know so much more about cancer. And there's so much support, there's so much research, there's so much everything. And I'll be honest with you, I was in such a bad headspace that I was like, at least like I'll die quickly from cancer, right? Like I didn't want to suffer. I was suffering every day for a really long time. And at that point I had been on really aggressive chemotherapy. I had just gotten my eggs frozen because I was told that all my chemo drugs would make me sterile, so that if I ever wanted to become a mom, I would have to, I don't know why that part.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. No, I know. So why did they, so you went on chemo drugs and you didn't have cancer, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
So how did you find, how did they figure out that you finally were confirmed for NMO?
Yeah, so I think it was that whole cancer. Sorry, I was not expecting to cry.
Okay.
It's been 12 years. Like I talk about everything else and everyone's stories, but when you talk about your own, you know, there's still so much trauma.
Of course.
I remember being in nuclear medicine, 7 a.m. Everyone around me is so sick. And that was the moment where I just looked back and I was like, how did this become my life? Like, what happened? And I did PET scan, and I remember there was like a 24-hour window after the test that, you know, they would call you to let you know what happened. I mean, what the results were. And I remember it was like the longest 24 hours of my life. I was going back and forth between like, do I want cancer? Do I not want cancer? Like in a normal world, like in a normal situation, you don't want it. But in this situation, I was almost praying for it. And the next day, I got a call from the doctor, and they were also very defeated. And they were just like, you don't have cancer. And that would be the best news ever for a normal situation. And I remember I collapsed, and that's when I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I've been sick every day with this unknown, mysterious thing for so long, and they don't even know what it is. And I'm getting like, you know, pumped with poison and losing my hair, and my face was huge from steroids. I can't be a mom, and all the different things. So it was a really, really difficult time. And then I was on Cytoxin, which is a really tough drug. So I was just very sick all the time from the disease and my treatments. And so, yeah, basically after that, I decided I was going to go on like a little bit of a journey to my past life in case I wasn't going to live much longer. So I took 2 months. I said, in 2 months, I'm going to go to Dubai when it was cool.
It wasn't getting bombed,
And then I was going to go to Bombay, the happiest time of my life, see all my friends, you know, see them and just be in that world for a little bit, go to Bangladesh, see my extended family. And then the last part of the trip was going to be in Bali, which was actually a retreat for people who were dying. And I got all of this set up with my doctors, the prescriptions and this and that, and they all understood, like, she needs a break. Like, I was burning out so fast. So that was actually very exciting for me. I had something to look forward to. I was like, okay, even if I die, at least I get to do all these cool things before I go. And so the day before I was supposed to leave, my doctor was like, we just want to check your levels one more time because you're immunosuppressed and just want to make sure everything's okay. So I'm like, oh. So I go to the lab, I give them my blood, I'm like closing out my office. Going away for 2 months is a big deal. You know, you have a lot of loose ends to tie up, my out of office stuff. I had a going away dinner that night. And as I was leaving from my going away dinner, luck, you know, just my luck, the fellow called and they were like, hey, your white blood cell count is way too low for you to get on a plane. If you even drink water in any of these places, you will die. So they're like, if you go, you would be going against medical advice. We cannot, in good faith, let you go. And I was like, well, too bad, I'm going. I'm going, I don't care, I paid for everything, I'm going. Like, everyone's waiting for me, I have a party in an hour. But of course, people in my life were like, you have to listen to your doctors. And I had a relapse at the same time. So not only did I not go on my trip, I had to go to the hospital again, and I got like an injection in my eye and all kinds of stuff. And then I started looking into euthanasia. And I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. This is not the kind of life I want to live. This is not what I imagined for myself. And so before I, made any serious decisions, I went to go see a Chinese healer in Boston on Newbury Street, if you know Boston. And this guy was like 90 years old. We didn't understand each other, but we understood each other. Basically, what he told me in his broken English was like, sometimes things have to get so bad for them to get better. Mm-hmm. And I think that was my rock bottom moment. Mm-hmm. And after that, I decided I was gonna fight this like really hard. I was not gonna let this fucking asshole win. And that's when I changed my doctor, who I felt was being reckless with my health and all the things, like just trying everything, like the most potent things. I changed my doctor, I went on a different therapy. I left ophthalmology because I was like, it's hard for me to work in a place where we're restoring vision every day where I'm still blind and there's nothing people can do for me. So that was the first year, which was extremely tough. The first 4 years, I had 9 relapses, which were very tough. I cycled through 13 biologics, which was not great for my body and everything else.
And there's still no approved treatment at that point?
At that point, no.
Okay.
And I still kept testing negative for the antibody, which I still do to this day. And then I had the worst relapse of my life in November 2018. Mm-hmm. I did not think I was gonna come out of the hospital alive, but I did. And I have been in remission since then.
So I want to talk about that. That's awesome. So first of all, obviously it's really hard to relive all these things. So thank you so much.
I think I got the cries out. I'm good now. Yeah, I'm good.
No, it's so good for our team to hear this because we're building a product for people like you. And it's really important to think about what is someone going through, what are you going through? And then you're looking at a product and how do we need to communicate to you and what do we need to surface to you in a way that's quick and meaningful. This isn't just another app we're building for someone trying to have a little bit more fun in their life or, become 5% more efficient as they communicate with people. So the story is really powerful.
Thank you.
I don't think we've heard anyone tell it to us so powerfully, honestly. So just reliving that with you is really important to all of us. Now, since that time, the world has really changed for NMO.
Yes.
There's, I think, 4 approved therapies.
Yes.
But I want you to talk about, because it's when people like myself and Mike, we look at our conditions, really ultra rare.
Yeah.
I look at NMO and I'm like, oh man, I'm so jealous. Like so many patients, you could do so many things, and pharma companies care. And how many patients?
20,000 in the U.S. and 250,000 worldwide diagnosed.
And you still had such a horrible experience. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. So I'd love for you to talk about All right, from that point, what was the advocacy landscape like? When did you say, all right, I'm going to start a foundation? What did you do? And what was that process like? And what have you learned from just being around other patients?
After getting diagnosed, I was in bed rest for 3 weeks. Everyone was like, do not Google this. Do not Google it. I Googled it. And I found that 5-year thing, which really blew my mind. But I was like, okay, fine, whatever. I mean, I have to keep living. What next? Like, how do I find a support group? Like, whatever. It wasn't resonating. Whatever I did see wasn't resonating. And it was also very, very, very depressing. I know I cried here, but like, I'm actually a really happy, smiley, bubbly person.
Tell, yeah.
So like, I just couldn't vibe with all the negativity. I was like, all right, fine. I have this disease that's going to kill me. Well, at least I got to, live and have fun and deal with it in a most positive way. And then I was like, how do you start a foundation? And I Googled it, and Google was like, oh, it's 5 easy steps. Lies. And it's not 5 easy steps. But I was like, you know what? I'm home. Maybe this happened to me for a reason. I was in the entertainment industry. I'm not shy. I can speak extemporaneously. I'm a people person. I have a degree in public relations. I worked in healthcare. I just felt like I had the right ingredients for it to come together in this nice little cake, whatever. I don't cook. So within 2 months of my diagnosis, I started the foundation. I got the IRS approval. I actually started working on it 3 weeks after my diagnosis. And really for me, the goal was, can I find another patient? Can I read a good story? Like, can I help make another patient feel less alone? I knew how alone I felt despite all of the support and love that I had in my life. But when you don't have a community around you that knows what you're going through or, that can relate, it's an incredibly isolating time. So, I mean, you guys know that being an ultra rare. I joined these Facebook groups before I started the foundation. I was like, okay, here are a bunch of people. And everyone was just complaining and they were sad. And of course, these are all very legitimate things, but I'm like, I still believed you could live with something so horrible being positive. Like for me, my biggest fear is not dying early or, whatever. My biggest fear is living unhappily. So like, I didn't want to be around that. And so I just got to work, and then I used social media very, very heavily.
Yep.
And when I started, it was just for NMO, and it was really just to raise awareness and build community. But of course, that changed over time.
So I want to talk about that because your advocacy group, it's very different from most of them that I see.
Yeah.
And it's, can I just tell them, like, it was when, at the last gala, for example, Sumaira dressed up basically like Cinderella, right? She travels with a glam squad. I mean, it's just different. And I think it's refreshing, actually. Yeah. And I think that's why you've attracted so many people and they're excited. I mean, you put your disease on the map, to be honest, even with such a large population. So can you just share a little bit, we work with advocacy groups, we work with all these patients. How did people get drawn to you? Why do you think people are so drawn? How is your group different from the others? And how are you maneuvering the landscape of these other foundations also in your space? And then what do you believe that you are strongest at in helping the community?
We're very colorful. We're very happy. We're very, very thoughtful about our messaging. I really think that a lot of what got me to what you see today, in addition to, modern medicine and great care, is a positive mindset. If you're in doomsday all day, every day, that's not going to help you. So I wanted that to be infectious to my community, whether it was through social media or it was through the stories that we were sharing or the colors that we were using. We're very thoughtful about the colors and the fonts and, this and that. In fact, I came up with our slogan when I was high on morphine, and to this day, it works and everybody loves it and people have copied it and all the things, and that's okay. But it's illuminating the darkness. Really, because I have lived this myself, I didn't want my experience to be the experience of everyone else. So I was like, Sumama is going to give everyone some joy and something to look forward to and make this disease kind of cool, and that's what I tried to do. And, it's funny that Wendy brought up, you know, the whole glam squad and this and that. That's who I always was, you know, from when I was a child. And I didn't want to just radically change because now I have a disease. You know, I've gotten a lot of criticism because, you know, there are haters and naysayers and all the things. And they're like, oh, she's too pretty to be a patient, or like, she's too glamorous, or this and that. I'm like, okay. I have a disease. What, you want me to shave my head and like be in a white sheet all day? Like, no, I'm still gonna like be glam and be myself. Like, authenticity is the key. And I think that is what draws people to us to this day.
Yep.
And it's not just me anymore. We have a big team. We have so many advocates, and the people we attract have a very similar mindset where they're like, we are not going to let this disease or any disease diagnosis define us, consume us, or limit us. That's how you let these diseases win.
So since then, now we have 4 approved therapies.
Yes.
Big Pharma's working on it.
Yeah.
So just walk us through that and how you worked with these pharmaceutical companies. What do they expect from you? What has a relationship been like, et cetera?
The first couple of years were really just dedicated to setting up, development, getting to know the community, sharing stories, sharing just disease education in a very digestible way, and all the things. And then I started having galas in 2016. I'm a gala. I don't know, you know, what can I say? I love a good gala, and it was a great way to raise money. People in Boston love galas, and there's a lot of rich people there, so they were throwing money at the organization, which was awesome. And I was like, okay, what do I do?
By the way, that is hard to do. As someone who has tried to throw a gala unsuccessfully, Mike has thrown a couple of galas. Like, people don't actually throw money at anything. So the fact that they did that is like quite a testament, you know, to what you were able to pull off. I think it's incredible.
I felt like I needed something to keep me driven, to keep me hungry, to keep me motivated, to keep me moving. And doing something like this and helping other people was sort of my way of doing that. Even then, even in those crazy moments, I was like, what a gift that I get to be able to do something that might actually make a difference. Even if it was for one person, it would make a difference. We got some money from all these galas. And, you know, at that point, it was really just me and a board. I was not paying myself. I was like, what do we do with this money? And so being in Boston, being in a city of medicine, I knew a lot of doctors. I started getting to know all the Harvard Medical School neurologists and things like that. And they were like, oh man, you should start a research fund. I was like, I'm gonna start a research fund. So that's what we did. And we started giving out these $25,000 grants. You know, they're not gonna find a cure, but they were seed grants given to these doctors who were otherwise finding it very challenging to get funding for this type of thing. So that happened in 2018. Wendy reached out to me in 2018.
And so Wendy is Wendy Erler, really well known in the space as a pharma patient advocate.
She's a godmother.
She's a godmother.
Sorts,
yeah,
right?
she's really exactly.
So she was at Alexion, which then got acquired by AstraZeneca. And she was the first person from industry who ever reached out to me. I had never interfaced with pharma ever in my life. And she reached out to me and she introduced herself and she said, I heard you're having a gala for NMO. We'd love to come. So she came and I was in the Cinderella outfit. And then she told me, like, we're developing a drug for NMO. And I remember, of course, I started crying because I was like, oh my God, somebody cares. An entity that has influence, resources, power, cares about my stupid little disease. Like, this could be life-changing. And it turns out that it was life-changing. And in 2019, June 2019, I'll never forget, the press release came out that Soliris, eculizumab, was the first ever FDA-approved therapy for NMO. And it was, I'm a crier, guys. I was crying all day, you know, happy tears, you know, all the things. It was such a relief. You guys know what it's like to have a disease where there's like no approved therapy. It's terrible. And 95% of rare diseases do not have an approved therapy. So to be part of that 5%, I was like, so we went from having 0 FDA-approved therapies, this was a death sentence, to 4 highly efficacious therapies. So not only do we have a therapy, we have treatment options. This is not normal for rare disease. That's why NMOSD has to be studied.
No, it's incredible. And I think, once there's one approved drug, other companies think, okay, this is solvable, right? But how now your patient population has another problem, right? How do you choose the right drug? And so how does that decision-making process happen?
Well, for us, one thing is we really believe in shared decision-making. So one thing that we did very early on, as soon as all 3 were approved, is we developed this interactive therapies chart on our website, which side by side, you see the different therapies, you see the frequency, the dosing, the drug delivery method, the side effects, this, that, and the other. And you can download that, and there's animations and audio and this and that. This is the most accessed page on our website around the world, utilized by doctors and patients. Because I'm a patient, right? So that's one of the things that I think really sets us apart from some of the other orgs is that a patient was leading this. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna wear my patient hat. I need to go into therapy. There are these options. What would help me? So I worked with developers, I worked with animators and all the things, and we made it happen very, very quickly. And to this day, it is the most accessed page on our website.
So one question is, why do you think that was necessary? Do you feel that when patients went to their doctors were not able to properly explain the different therapy options?
A couple of things. I think there's that. There's also still a resistance from these neurologists to prescribe the new FDA-approved therapies. They're still prescribing the off-label therapies, which I think is criminal. That's a whole separate issue, but it's what I just said, but also the only other place where this information existed was on the therapy companies' websites, and it was separate. And come on, pharma marketing, it's kind of cheesy and it's a little corporate. It's not really catering to the patients, right? And so we position ourselves to be patient-led, patient-powered, science-driven, and therapy agnostic. So I felt like we were in a very strong position to frame these side by side, which is the name of our shared decision-making program, and present this information in an unbiased, very digestible way that wouldn't stress the patient out.
But what does a patient do when their provider says, I don't want to prescribe that? Do they come to you to say, find a new doctor? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's because of all of this feedback that we got that we developed this other program called Side by Side, which is focused on shared decision-making. And we filmed this entire scenario with Michael Levy, who is the NMO guy of the world and a real-life patient on what are good examples of shared decision-making? What are not good examples of shared decision-making, alongside guides and checklists, questions you can ask your doctors, just educating patients that we no longer live in an era where the doctor's okay, this is what you get, see you next time, goodbye. No, you're allowed to ask questions. You're allowed to challenge your doctor. And if you're not satisfied with your care, then you can change your doctor. You are not beholden to your doctor. One of the things that really set us apart was the global aspect of things. So I think I'm a global gal. I'm a global citizen.
I like it. I like that.
And I'm a child of immigrants. I always used to think if my parents did not move to the United States from Bangladesh and I got this in Bangladesh, I would have been dead.
Yeah.
So what are the patients there doing, or in Africa or in LATAM or even Europe and all these places? So we started globally expanding in 2019. And now we have legal entities spread out all over the world, but we work across the entire world in 36 languages. And then the other thing is that we started moving into other disease states. So diseases that were adjacent to NMOSD. So the next one was MOGAD. You ready? Myelin oligodendrocyte glycoprotein antibody associated disorder. For a not science gal, I'm very impressed that I could do that. But that's sort of the cousin disease to NMOSD.
Okay.
And now there are 2 clinical trials for that. We now frame ourselves as an organization dedicated to rare neuroinflammatory and related disorders. And this really makes a lot of sense because a lot of these communities don't have a community, first of all.
Right.
But second, the symptoms overlap, the doctors overlap, the treatments overlap, the lived experiences overlap. So why not just make this party bigger? But the biggest news, guys, last year, we were awarded a $9 million funding award from the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, PCORI, to conduct a 5-year comparative effectiveness trial of the 4 approved therapies versus rituximab. We have 10 sites confirmed across the world. hoping to get many, many more. And this is a huge deal in our community.
Yeah, that is amazing.
It is a really big deal for not just NMOSD, it's a really big deal for, I think, rare diseases that eventually get more than one therapy, because we're going to be answering questions that everyone wants to know, but that pharma isn't in a position to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's an area that we could help, right? With patients that can't go to those 10 sites. Like, how can we collect the data for those patients? And we could think about different things.
Yeah,
that's
so
awesome.
That's the story, guys. And I won Miss Bangladesh USA 2015, which my business partner is always like, don't tell people that. He's like, you have so many more interesting things about you. I was like, no, but I love that one because I won that when I was on Cytoxin, balding. My face was huge. I was like, to me, I was the ugliest I had ever been, and I won a beauty pageant. But it was so special because I'm really proud to be Bangladeshi, and it keeps me kind of connected to my roots. So that's my story, guys. Thanks for having me.